Who knows?
Isn't that the tagline for some superhero?
The
Greetings,
shadow
sentient
knows.
beings. This stream is not intended for children, even though it's going to show a lot of toys. Nothing on my channel is ever intended for children because I don't give a fuck about the language people use, and we're usually talking about adult themes. Okay, so we've got Jens and Pirate Kitty with us for right now.
Hello?
So what's going on with everybody?
Nothing. Just hanging out. Nothing ever going on.
Well, I'm
Although,
finally feeling well enough to get on video again. So I was going to do some scripting today and do some recording, but I'm guessing none of that's happening till tomorrow now. That's not your fault, Perps. That's just this afternoon's gone in that direction for me. So I may as well hop on here until I have to go. So.
you asked what's going on, and I suddenly thought that I had forgotten I was going to be on Neil's show and thought the day had passed.
What
And
are
I was
you
like,
on?
the 19th.
19th.
Okay.
Awesome.
Um,
You're so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the 19th should be good. The weekend just before, that's going to be pretty busy for me, so I probably won't be online much, but the 19th, we're back to the middle of the week, so things should be back to normal by then.
Mm-hmm. I specifically said it had to be a Wednesday or a Thursday because those are my days off from work.
Yep.
I had to
That
stop
makes
coming in.
sense.
I had to stop coming in on your midday on Wednesdays, Purple, because I was not getting a damn thing done around the apartment.
Yeah, it's okay.
Spending 4 or 5
So,
hours in here chatting instead of like doing dishes or something productive.
By the way,
yep.
Perps, your
It,
pictures are being cut off in this mode that we're viewing in.
Yeah, you should
yeah, I
probably
know
use the mode
they're
that.
being trimmed off. I
Yeah,
know.
where it shows the full.
I'm not worried about too much.
Well, there's
So in
a.
the side chat, we've got Be Mindful, we've got Tea and Danish, Amiga Nuts, Sammy Jenkins just came in, and Maya.
Yeah. You know, I owned a Commodore Amiga. I don't remember them having nuts.
Yeah, I actually never got the Amiga. I had the, what was it, the Commodore 28 XL,
Oh,
and then after getting an Amiga, I wound up getting a really good deal on a used Atari ST, so I wound up going to that
yeah, I
instead.
never had an ST. We had an Amiga, which, in all honesty, I never liked the 68,000 as much as the 6502 machines. I know the graphics were better on the Amiga and the ST, but there was just, I mean, you were playing the same type of games, but I don't think the same care was put into them, into creating them. There were some
Yeah,
classics on those machines, but they haven't held up as well as the Commodore 64 and the Atari XL series did.
I agree for the most part. One big exception to that was on the Atari ST, and part of the reason I got that was we used to get a bunch of them together in a network to play MIDI Maze.
Oh,
And if
okay. Never played that.
yeah, if you haven't heard of MIDI Maze, it's each person is in a maze that you're seeing the maze.
In
It's
3D.
basically it's Pac-Man versus it's Pac-Man meets Rambo, but you're seeing the maze from Pac-Man's level that you're inside with the walls going up, but the whoever's running the central council can set all sorts of different features and weapons. So you
Cool.
can set things like bullets that ricochet, or you can set it so that people can walk through walls and different things like that. And basically, you're just a bunch of little balls with smiley faces running around trying to shoot each other.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, that would be fun. I agree
Well,
with you there, but as far as what an example of that arcade conversions. Our type on the Amiga was an outstanding port. The graphics were on par, the music was excellent, and everything. And yet, the Commodore 64 version was still an absolutely excellent and amazingly coded game. And
Yeah.
I mean, even though graphically inferior, the soundtrack was better than the Amiga because it was an interpretation and not just a straight trying to rip it onto the Amiga, which didn't work very well, comparing a 16-channel sound from the arcade to the 4-channel of the Amiga.
Yeah, I
So,
loved the Commodore 64. It was definitely my favorite machine.
The SID chip was... I mean, I know Atari people go, oh, the Pokey was amazing. Pokey was good. It lacked some of the features that the SID had that made the SID the better sound chip. And that's all there was to it. The SID chip was an amazing chip. And it wasn't even the chip that was intended.
Yep.
I can't remember the name of the developer. The guy who actually made it was working on a sound chip that was going to go in their new 8-bit machine. The Commodore 64 was rushed. Basically, Jack Tramiel said, oh, we have to have it out by Christmas now. And the engineers were saying, no, we need another 6 months to finish the machine and get all the custom chips ready. So the original SID chip was designed to have 30 voices and direct digital analog conversion if required. That made it a better sound chip than what the Amiga ended up with.
Yeah.
But they cut it short, and which is still made a really good sound chip, but they cut it short on its production. The VIC-2 chip was going to have an 80-column graphics mode originally and a proper color palette, but they cut those out because they ran out of time.
Well, they were also trying to keep the cost down because the goal was to release a computer for under $1,000.
It was, but the extra, I mean, Commodore owned Boss Tech, that the extra development time was the only extra cost. It wasn't the extra cost of the silicon. It was always going to cost them the same, regardless of what they did.
Okay, so the cost per unit wasn't going to really matter.
The cost per unit wasn't going to change. It was the development time, but that wasn't Jack's problem. At the time, Commodore were making bucket loads of money. That wasn't the problem. The problem was Jack was a businessman first and an IT professional second, and he knew that if they didn't get the machine out before Christmas, they would lose a shitload of sales. And he also knew what Apple were up to at the time, and you've got to remember that the Commodore 64 only came out a year prior to the first Macs. They wanted the 64s to be an education machine. They wanted to challenge Apple. And to do that, they had to be first because they weren't the same level of machine.
I didn't realize the Mac came out that close to it.
Yeah. Well, the 64 came out in 83 and the Mac came out in 84.
Had to be a bit earlier than that because I bought my first Commodore 64 in 82.
82? End of 82, sorry. They were released for Christmas 82. Sorry.
Yeah, so that was probably October or November of 82 that I got my first machine.
But the engineers wanted to release it mid-83. And they were worried that was too close to when Apple's Mac's release date would be, and that they wouldn't get a big core market. I don't think that was true because Commodore owners, even for the VIC-20, were pretty parochial, and as a home computer, I don't think it was ever going to be matched in that. And the Mac was never going to be the gaming machine that even the Commodore was released. And if they delayed it, that's 6 months, they would have ended up with a machine that, even the Amiga was going to struggle to keep up with.
Yeah, and the Commodore really had the appeal to hackers because, just its normal routine was that it downloaded its entire operating system from the ROM into RAM. So you could infinitely modify the operating system if you understood machine language.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think, as much as anybody who loves the Commodore Amiga is going to argue with me on this, I think Commodore's biggest mistake, aside from getting rid of Jack, even though I think Jack was wrong with his approach on the Commodore 64, Commodore's biggest mistake was actually buying Amiga. They had no need to buy Amiga. They had the in-house expertise to build as good, if not better, machine.
Yeah.
they could have used their own processors, which would have made way more sense than going to the 68,000. The 65816 is a faster processor per clock cycle than the 68,000 is.
Well, and they
So
lost a lot of their audience because they didn't have any kind of compatibility. The Amiga needed to have a 64 emulator mode to keep their original audience.
yeah, so they would have been way better off going to the 65816 or an equivalent thereof. But even then, they didn't even need to do that. I mean, the later generation 6502s that they were releasing could already do 8 megahertz. The 6502 at 8 megahertz was performing, even though it didn't have the higher end instructions for multiplication and that built into it, was performing most cycling instructions, as in your basic add and subtract and your branching, faster than the 68,000 could at equivalent clock speed. So they could have gone just with the faster 6502 with memory banking to get the memory out there and used support chips to provide what they needed. You know, they were quite capable of building their own blitter chips for graphics. They were quite capable of building their own sound chips because they did that. And I think they would have ended up with a better machine, and something that people I think would have appreciated more than what, I mean, people like the Amiga, but yeah, it wasn't the big thing. But the loss for Commodore was Jack Trumbull walking. I mean, I know by all accounts he was an absolute prick to work for, but in a very large sense, he was the company. He was the public face of the company. And he was the driving force behind most of what they did. It's why they languished for about 3 years after he left.
Yeah, I didn't understand the politics of it at the time when it was happening.
He disagreed with what the other major investor did in the company. And Jack's way was, look, if you're not going to listen to me, if you're not going to take my advice on board when I started this company, I'm walking, which is exactly what he did. It was his attitude with everything, you know. It wasn't a case of it's my way, it's the highway, because he listened to his engineers. He did actually tend to do things, but he was also a businessman first, which is why, even though he listened to his engineers about releasing the Commodore 64 later, he refused to do it because he realized that to get the market share they needed, he had to release earlier, which was unfortunate. But yeah, if he'd stayed in there longer, I think Commodore may have done things very differently. You could have even maybe found that Apple may not have even gone 68,000 in the long term at the Mac range. They may have ended up going down the 2GS range ultimately with their machines if Commodore had continued developing and MOS Technology kept going with developing the 6502, because Apple had backed themselves in a quarter when they released the 2GS. The 2GS at the time they released it, which was their Apple II compatible WYSIWYG new machine based on the 65816, actually outperformed the Mac they had. When they were in development, it outperformed the current Mac that was available. So their answer to that was, we're going to lower the clock speed of the 65816 that's in it. So they gimped the machine so it didn't outperform their Macs, which I think is hilarious.
Did either of you ever do anything with a TRS-80?
I've seen them.
That was my first computer.
Oh wow.
It was one. I think it was either just the keyboard, or it was a keyboard and like a clunky monitor. I can't remember, but the only reason I know what system it is because I remembered the name of the first video game I ever remember playing, which was a game called Gana Bawana. It was a what was it? It was a isometric platformer.
Oh, so it was it like Qubit?
It was.
You had to jump on tiles to mark them off, and when you marked off all the tiles, you moved on to the next level.
No, you
okay.
had to jump, but it was basically you started at one end of the screen, you had to get to the other end of the screen, and there was obstacles in the way, like alligators in the water, or
Oh, okay.
logs falling down the
Sounds
waterfall.
Like Pitfall.
Almost. It was made by the same company that did Super Pitfall.
Okay.
Let me see.
Pitfall was an awesome game for its time. It got really boring. There were some amazing 8-bit games. There was some absolute trash, but the thing about the games in the 8-bit era was it was so easy to get the games out to people, and they ended up so cheap that there was so much development going on that some amazing things were done with some fairly limited hardware.
Yeah,
I mean, not
even
just
when
with the
they had to
Commodore.
release them on cartridges, that that they were still relatively expensive because there was the hardware involved.
Well,
they still
there's some-
managed quite a price. They still managed a price point, that most kids could afford to pick up new games every couple of weeks.
I still keep an eye on, and because I've still got a Commodore 64, I still keep an eye on what the current release is that people are releasing, because there are still games being released for the Commodore 64.
Hey, Perp, you want to share my screen for a second?
I didn't know there were still new games coming out for it.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a little shocking.
That style of isometric. So it's more like Zaxxon.
Yes.
It is very Zaxxon, actually.
It's made by a Steve Bjork, something like that.
That's actually kind of impressive for a TRS-80 game.
But you see, you got to avoid the
missiles,
things.
yeah.
Yep.
And then, let's see. Let's skip forward ahead. There's another level come up. Now, you have to collect all the dots, but there's people throwing spears at you.
Your basic 8-bit slider game, although it's interesting that, they put it on the diagonal like that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Let's see if they've got a picture of the level that I remember the most. This one. You got to collect the little white dots and get through. Without getting hit by anything.
Okay.
Yep, he died.
Sorry if I'm missing anything going on here, but my computer's doing strange things tonight, particularly with the side chat.
Purple, if what you might want to do is put it in the middle setting. That should focus you big on the left side of the screen, and then put us on the left. It's the very center setting.
Yeah. Having said that, do you remember Purple, all the weird Commodore 64 characters that they called Petsky?
This is all before my time.
Perhaps?
Oh, he says
I guess they didn't use that term for it much around here, but...
well, Petsky came later because it was a derivative of ASCII, so... but you know how the Commodore had all those extra characters that you could access to...
Yeah, that just with the extra shift key, you could get each key to print 4 different characters.
I'm going to show you a game that a guy wrote 2 years ago, and it was made entirely out of those characters. I'll share my screen.
Yeah, I know there were a number of games that were done that way.
Oh no, this is outstanding. This thing is amazing. All right, I'll play it. Is it going to play?
it's moving. Yeah, it's just I can see the time ticking.
I'll shift it forward a bit. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Considering that's all text characters, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, the design of the figures is really quite nice.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's good. And it's quite fast. There is actually sound effects in the actual game, but for some reason they're not working in the video. But Probably because
I
I've
think
got it
that's
muted.
probably a thing with StreamYards. It seems to have problems with video,
I also had it
with
muted.
getting audio from videos.
Did you select the share audio button? Just
I might not have to.
yeah.
No, I can't hear it here either. So I'm thinking the person who made the video didn't actually put the audio in it. So, but if I try and find this game they made a couple of years ago, it's gives you an idea. There it is. Sam's Journey is.
Okay. Seems for some reason that my
I'll tell you when I'm ready.
my split cam just seems to be getting stuck on one image here and there. It doesn't keep cycling through the way it's supposed to.
All right, share that. Oh, when you're ready, perhaps.
Oh, is that? Oh, okay.
It's called Sam's Journey. But for some reason, the sound's not working on this either. So, yeah.
The one I remember most on the 64 was a game called Fantasy. It was spelled like PHAS.
Can you imagine if a game like this had come out in the day for the 64?
That's actually pretty decent, like artwork and stuff.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Like I've tried to go back and play some of the games that I used to play. Like my absolute favorite was a game called Quest for Glory. It was a game about a guy who just finished the adventuring school and he goes into this valley and he gets snowed in. And come to find out, the Baron's daughter and son have both been cursed by the evil witch Baba Yaga, and you have to, you know, do tasks for the people and earn money and gear up your skills, and basically save the Baron's children. And it's a 5 or 6 game series that I played to death. And it released March 1989. So when I was 9. And the last game was released in 1998 when I graduated from high school.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Maya was saying she doesn't have a machine that would play any of her old games. Emulation, if you don't actually own the original hardware, emulators will run the old games. So, and most of the old 8 and 16-bit machines emulate pretty well. So,
I haven't found a good emulator for the 64. All the ones I have wound up being kind of glitchy.
really?
64?
Yeah, there's some good ones for the 64.
Well, people tell me there's good ones out there. I'm just apparently not finding the good
you
ones.
can even emulate the memory expansion modules and everything.
Yeah.
What's the main one? Frodo's all right. It's a bit easier to use, but it's not great. The main one you want is, and I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I can't say it's something I've spent a lot of time pursuing. Yeah, it's kind of a nostalgic feeling for it, but I don't really play video games very much anyway.
If you wanted to play Commodore 64, you get Vice. There's multiple emulators in it, but there's one that does a cycle per cycle equivalent emulation, and pretty much it emulates virtually anything that would run on a real 64.
What I need is somebody who's got a disk drive that could read off some text files written from a Commodore 64 and put them into a format that I could.
You are joking. You have files still on floppy disks?
Well, going through my stuff in storage, I found a copy of the manuscript from the novel I wrote when I was a teenager. But it's on Commodore 64 floppies.
You'd have to post them to me. I have a 1541.
Okay, see, that's been the main thing that I've run into is I haven't found anybody who's got a 5 1/4 inch drive anymore.
I've got a 1541. That works.
Okay.
I've got a 1541 too as well, but it doesn't work at the moment. Three Commodore 64s, 2 working. So yeah, I can read them off onto an actual Commodore 64, copy them onto an SD card, and then pop them in a PC.
That would be wonderful. I'm sure the novel itself is,
But there'll be
complete
people
dreck
closer
and,
to you that can do that as
pretty
well.
much unreadable, but it would still be interesting to go back and see it.
Yeah. Surely there must be somebody in the US nearby to within our group who still has a Commodore 64.
Who?
There must be somebody actually in the US who still, within our circle of people who actually still has a Commodore 64 as well. So
Probably. I haven't heard anybody else mention that they've got a working 64.
yeah,
It's a pretty niche topic. You probably have to mention it for somebody to be like, "Oh, I have one of those." It's not something people just throw around every day. I think.
Put it in the chat because there's quite a few people who are interested. Where are you actually moving to, Perps?
Minnesota. Okay, be mindful. I kind of question about somebody actually getting one of the darts stuck in their head. They do have metal points, but they're not really that sharp. I think more likely somebody could get a concussion from one more than being stabbed by one.
If you win that prize, Purple is not liable for any damages you cause if you try and play with them.
Hi there. Hi, Doc. Yeah, actually, if you watch the video I put out tonight with the catalog of stuff, yeah, I said that they should be collector's items and they really probably shouldn't be played with because, yeah, if somebody walks into your line of fire, they could get seriously injured. You played with real guns, huh? Yeah, we couldn't afford real guns. We had either plastic ones or we had ones that we made ourselves down in the wood shop.
There are quite a few people who do it though. Perhaps I'll throw out to a couple of people I know who are part of the 8-bit enthusiasts, and I'll see if I can find someone closer to you. And I'm being called. Back in a sec.
Okay.
Do you watch anything by Noel Plum?
Occasionally, not on a regular basis.
I just watched one of his videos that I thought that proposed a very interesting idea. If you're interested in hearing it, at least my understanding of it. Apparently, there is a train of thought that the Israelites' inheritance of Cana, is that how you pronounce it? Cana? The land area?
Oh, Canaan?
Yeah, Canaan. There we go. There's an N in there. I don't know. Was not unconditional. And that it suggests that some of the things that have happened, like the Assyrian and Babylonian destructions, were God using outside agents to punish the Israelites for being unfaithful.
Oh, who are we punishing?
The Israelis. I've talked about this. Do you watch anything by Noel Plum?
Occasionally.
So I watched one of his older videos from like November of last year, and he was talking about this train of thought. And I'm going to try to see if I can find the Deuteromistic theology, I think is what he called it.
Okay.
Basically, the idea being that yes, God promised the Israelites the land of Canaan, but it wasn't unconditional, and so when they're doing what they're supposed to do, God blesses them. And when they're being unfaithful and not following the rules, they get punished. The idea being that when the Assyrians and the Babylonians defeated them, the kingdom of the Israelites and the kingdom of Judea, that was God punishing them for being unfaithful or breaking the rules or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, but this draws back because basically he was replying to SJ about something, and he said, "I can say through my own feelings and my own morals that the Holocaust was wrong, but you can't say that as a Christian because you can't show that the Nazis were not an outside nation punishing the Jewish people for some unfaithfulness like they did when they killed when another nation attacked during the Assyrians and the Babylonians." And then there was another example that he brought up that I can't remember, something about a king who was his nation was taken over and he was forced to watch them like kill his children, and then they blinded him and then killed him or something like that. I wasn't paying a lot of attention, and I thought that was a really interesting idea in a way.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to that whole thing of God is basically an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing moralistic about the God of the Bible.
Right.
Oh, yeah, don't kill people. Yeah, and then go and kill people.
Mm-hmm.
The God of the Bible would be a great candidate for therapy. I mean, schizoid tendencies, prone to fits of rage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of reasons that the God of the Bible is horrible and non-moral.
Well, that's why I say I'm an apathist. I don't care if God exists. If I give you that God exists and is exactly as described in the Bible, you've still got a fuck of a long way to convince me he's worthy of worshiping.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
I mean, even go ahead.
No, you go.
I was gonna say, yeah, even if you prove that the God of the Bible is real, based on the Bible and the actions of his current followers and his past followers, I still wouldn't worship him. I would no longer be an atheist, but I would not be a Christian.
If it came down to the two, I'd rather follow Satan. Because
Yeah.
I keep giving this challenge and no one has ever found it for me yet. But show me one passage in the Bible where Satan lied. You can show several where God lied. No one's been able to show me one where Satan lies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So
I've
given
made
the
the
two,
argument,
which one would you rather follow?
I've made the argument several times that God's the bad dude, and the only thing Satan is guilty of is trying to convince people not to listen to his daddy.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing that, most of the stories, Satan actually is trying to help humankind. The whole
right.
Garden of Eden thing, he wanted to give humans wisdom.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, even in that story, like the snake never lies about it.
The snake is the only character in that story that doesn't lie. Everyone else does.
Yeah, like when Eve says the snake
Christians will say, what about the horrible things Satan did to Job? Satan didn't do those horrible things to Job. God did. God was a complete asshole.
That is the only case where Satan killed anyone, but he had to get God's permission first.
Mm-hmm. We talked about that once before.
Reluctant. Satan didn't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that whole thing is justified. Well, Job got a new family, so it was all okay. And it's like, yeah, that's only if you completely discount that Job's wife and children were actually people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the only way they could have made that even remotely a passable thing would be if, like, God brought them back to life, or
it was all a dream.
It was all, yeah. I was trying not to say that, but yeah, that was what my mind first went to.
And see, that would have made sense if at the end of it, God just resurrected them, and gave Job some kind of a payoff that, sorry I put you through all this. Everybody's back to normal, everything's fine, we hit the reset, which God should have been able to do, but they didn't do that.
Oh, are they trying to? What was that show that did that? Dallas, we have a Dallas moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where
that
Joe
entire
Pebble wakes
season
up
of
in the
the show
shower.
was just a dream.
Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's one of those things I like to find out about.
Yeah,
When it
that's
comes to
horribly
movies,
bad writing. Just as a writer, that pisses me off when they do that.
dream sequences is an excuse for a shit season.
Even when they just do it for 1 or 2 episodes, it's like, no, you've got to come up with something better for that. You've got to at least come up with, some reason why it happened.
Mm-hmm.
There was one episode of Stargate that made it passable
Oh, I guess
because
that.
they had some aliens that supposedly gave them this advanced technology and all this, and it turned out in the end that it was all Daniel having a dream, but it was
Yeah.
the aliens putting him in this dream state to realize that given that kind of power, even he could have turned into a monster.
I can think of 2 other instances where writers have done that. One of them I thought was actually pretty good. Another one not so much. But there was an episode of Justice League where Superman is fighting one of his villains, and this villain throws another villain on him, and it's a monster that attaches to him, and whoever it attaches to, it puts them into a sleep state and creates their most perfect world.
Oh wow! I actually saw a clip from that the other day.
And it gets on Superman, and it puts Superman in this world where he's on Krypton, and he's got a lovely wife, and he's got a son, and they got the dog, and it was never exploded. And unfortunately, but the thing is that the alien puts it like that so that it can then draw your life force, and it'll eventually kill you. And unfortunately, Batman and Wonder Woman saved him and brought him out of this state so that he realized that everything that he had just experienced was a dream. I thought it was done well for that particular episode. The one that I didn't like was the end of Twilight.
Never saw that, and I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah, you're not missing much, but at the end of the spoilers.
Oh yeah.
Spoilers. At the end of the third Twilight movie, there's this huge, ginormous battle, and all kinds of people end up dead. And then at the very end, it's revealed that this fight was simply a mental projection created in the mind of the vampire leader by sparkly vampire
Magic.
sparkly vampire's daughter, showing him that, hey, if you proceed with what you're going to do, this is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, Doc Fearsome said, Nightmare on Elm Street, it was all a dream sequence, but people die. And that's a totally different thing because there were real life consequences.
And it was the hub of the story. It wasn't a Deus Ex Machina put into the story just for the sake of solving the writers.
Yeah.
It was the story.
But you had emotional investment in the characters then because it was affecting things that actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't like Deus Ex Mechas. Well, they do them all the time in sci-fi.
Yep.
Yeah, they do that a lot with, time machine episodes too, and that's like, yeah, time travel has to be handled very carefully.
Or not at all.
Yeah.
I remember a time travel episode in a show that I used to watch called Babylon 5. You might never have heard of it.
Of course I have.
I'm just kidding. But they had a whole time travel episode. But they followed the non-divergent. There's two ways to do time travel. One in which what you do can affect the future, and one in which what you do cannot affect the future. It's always what happened.
Yeah.
And they went with the what you do can affect the future. And eventually at the end of the episode, the two people that had gone back in time ceased to exist because they stopped their creation by affecting the future, the past. It's been a long time, but that's what I remember the ending where they're standing there going, the bad guy's like, I'm going to get you. And he's like, the good guy's like, no, you're not, because we're going to go. And then they just fade away because they no longer exist. I'm not sure how I feel about that one.
Yeah, I've dealt a lot with time travel in my own writing,
Mm-hmm.
and I've worked with a kind of modified concept of the divergent time.
Mm-hmm.
Of seeing it like a series of rivers that, yeah, at critical decision points, it's like a rock in the stream and it splits off and goes two different directions.
Mm-hmm.
But that in some cases, there is also the possibility the streams will remerge again later on, which is how you will get people who have two totally different versions of history because they experience different time streams, but now they're living in a time stream together again. So,
Oh.
in that context, the Mandela effect is an actual thing.
Yeah.
And that leads to some interesting things because you have, main characters, if they weren't together at the time that it happened, could have completely different memories of a couple of weeks in between.
Hmm. I kind of like the one that the way that they did it in the Time Machine movie, the more recent one, where you can't you can't really change the future. What you do when you go back in time was what always happened.
Yeah, the looping effect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, in the model I'm using, that can happen too, that some of the streams can just wind up in a loop, that they'll keep going round and round and they won't influence anything else then.
Mm. It's an interesting idea.
But also there's kind of a greater picture of it that at the human level we don't see. But I did have this one race of beings that, is kind of like removed from it, like looking up above. So instead of seeing any particular human history or outcome, they're looking at the big picture of it and they're looking at basically an average of what all the possible human streams come out to. So in that respect, it's like each individual stream, doesn't really seem to have consequences outside of that stream to the people involved in it. But on the whole picture of our species at large, it does have an issue.
Mm.
Although one of the best bits from time travel, again from Stargate SG-1, was that they wound up going into an alternate timeline where the Goa'uld had landed and were attacking the Stargate base. And, Tilk was fighting for the other side. So he walked up to himself on the other side and just blasted him with his staff. And they look at him like, how could you do that? And he says, our reality is the only one of consequence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I guess.
To him,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was a very pragmatic philosophy.
But also, I mean, he's still helping that.
Well, that was the idea, that he was still helping keep another Earth liberated.
I mean, but then there's the possibility of, well, what if they could have converted that Teal'c? If he was converted in one time, he could.
They actually tried that first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I actually was not a big Stargate fan. I didn't watch a lot of the shows.
Oh, I loved SG-1.
I've seen a
Oddly
lot
enough,
of SG-1,
I never
but
got to see the end of it. I saw like through season 8. I didn't get to see the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
what I couldn't do was I couldn't do Atlantis.
I enjoyed Atlantis.
I just couldn't stand that one scientist guy that was always like a douche canoe.
Rodney.
Yes, I could not stand Rodney.
Rodney was alright.
I hear he got better as the series progressed, but you got to get over that hump where you can't stand him.
Yeah, I want to go back and rewatch the whole thing from the beginning so that then I can see
Okay, so what do you guys think of
Atlantis and the
Picard?
universe were all about.
Say
What
what?
was that, Jens?
What do you think about Picard?
Haven't seen it.
Oh, what?
No, I haven't seen it yet either, just because I rarely watch TV.
Same.
But I've been hearing good things about it.
It's awesome.
Hmm.
The main thing that I like is I've been hearing from some real fans that they seem to be, staying within the continuity. They're not doing anything that breaks anything that's canon.
It feels Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
Mm.
Unlike Discovery, which didn't, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I had heard.
My thoughts on that is, at least for the first season, what was the Seth thingies, the comedy takeoff of Star Trek called?
The Orwell.
Orwell. From my mind, the first season of Orwell was more like Star Trek than Star Trek.
Yeah.
I haven't really watched the next few seasons of it because I got a bit sick of it. It was the same sort of humor all over and over again, and at a certain point, you get sick of that.
That's the same with me. I watched like the first season and a half of the Orville and kind of lost interest in it then. What I got from Discovery is they tried to pull the kind of thing we're talking about with time travel, that they tried to establish that, well, this is a different timeline, so the continuity doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah,
if you're going to do that, launch a new show. Don't give it the same title and try to pass it off as the same thing.
But then they won't get the fans' automatic approval until it turns out to be shit.
Anyway.
No, but then you won't get the fans all pissed off at you either.
No, that's fair.
I mean, let's face it, Star Wars did the same thing.
Mm.
Yeah, that's why I stopped watching Star Wars after Jar Jar.
Yeah.
The thing is the second and third reboot weren't too terrible in my opinion, but I'm not like a super fan. Like, you'd have to do something really, really, really bad for me to just be like, this movie was shit and I need to leave right now.
Okay, but
Jar Jar was very, very close.
If you're not going to base it on the established canon, then why bother fucking to do a reboot? Why not just write it as a new series with different characters? Or for that matter, the same characters with different names. Just don't try to connect it to something if you're not going to follow the laws that were established for that universe.
I don't see that problem in the prequels for Star Wars. I mean, I know Jar Jar was annoying and everything and really not needed for the story, moving the story along, but the stories themselves are okay. My problem is with the newest ones. Whilst Force Awakens was all right, although explaining how he was able to do fucking several years worth of training Jedi abilities with no training whatsoever, that's an issue.
Yeah, well, one of the issues with the Star Wars prequels is that basically the entire Clone Wars series has to be jammed into about 5 minutes between two scenes in one movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the only things that really bothered me about the prequels was the whole thing of like trying to take it out of sci-fi, science fantasy, and make it science fiction by trying to explain the Force with the introduction of midichlorians and Jar Jar.
Yeah, well, that was the biggest mistake, that they had given. The whole thing was built on it being a spiritual aspect of a universe where magic worked.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And
midichlorians did not get rid of the spiritual side or the magical sort of side of the Force anyway.
Yes, it did. They literally sucked the magic out of the universe with that.
No, I think that's a misunderstanding.
They tried to tie it into something biological rather than something magical.
Yes and no.
No?
Yes.
Okay,
no,
go ahead.
Yes and no. What the midichlorians were was The midichlorians were like a mitochondrial DNA sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? They were a life form that had evolved purely to be completely in tune with the Force. Some people had a large amount of these within their system, usually by process of birth. So if you were born of a family that was powerful in it or had a lineage of this within it, you would. But it was that was explaining a genetic link as to why people had it and some people didn't, because it was related to how much of this you had as a genetic structure within your body as to how well you could communicate with them. So they were a symbiotic organism that lived within
Yeah.
within the people of the Star Wars universe, all the different races, which explains why it could go across multiple races and etc. Um, the people who were able to coexist with these things were in tune with the Force because
Yeah.
these things were in tune with the Force. So the spiritual and mystical part of it was still there. It was a scientific explanation as to why only certain people could tune into it.
Well, and I think the main thing with the midichlorians were they were trying to explain, why it would go along hereditary bloodlines.
Mm.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
that's
something I
why.
don't think they needed to do.
No, I tend to agree with you, especially as they made this whole thing about Jedi's weren't supposed to get married and have families. It was kind of pointless, but I do understand why George did it. He wanted a means of being able to detect the strength of a possible strength of a Force user by something, and this was his way of doing it while still keeping all the mystical part of it there. So it didn't take away the mystical. It wasn't that you had midichlorians, so you were a Force. No, the Force was still a thing. This life form had evolved to be completely in tune with it. It was symbiotic, but not all people had it.
Yeah, but the idea that they could tell who had the Force by a simple blood test.
So that
Well,
that's
yeah,
why didn't.
that's because they had the midichlorians didn't mean they were actually going to be any good at using it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it meant that they had the power. It just,
They had
was a
potential.
question of whether or not they had ever been trained to
Yeah,
use it.
it was about potential.
Yeah.
It was a way of detecting somebody's potential rather than just relying on it finally showing up in there. But they've kind of ignored it since anyway.
Yeah, because
So,
well, part of the thing is just like, okay, after 1, 2, and 3, and Darth Vader's out there killing all the Jedi's. What was to stop him from going planet to planet and forcing blood testing on their citizens? And this kid's got too much midichlorians. I'm just going to get rid of him.
oh yeah, no,
Or
honestly,
this
had
person. Mhm.
George Lucas had a better plan for it, I'm pretty sure that's what would have happened. Although we didn't see. No, yeah, honestly, that's probably what should have been happening, or they should have been stories about that having happened or something. I mean, there was an aspect of that within the post stuff where they actually were looking for people who were Force sensitive to get rid of them or use them as they weren't actually Sith, but they were still trained somewhat in lightsaber usage to hunt down rogue Jedi in that. I can't remember what they called them.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the animated series too regularly. So
Well, and another problem they ran into was the whole thing with the battle droids. Is that if you can create these robots to, go and fight your wars, why would anybody go back to humans fighting the wars? Why wouldn't they keep using the droids that they could mass produce relatively cheaply?
well, that's why they did the clones, isn't it?
I think the point of the clones, though, was to have a brainwashed, loyal human base of people.
I
Versus,
think their point was that droids are good for some things, but in other things they're not very useful.
Mhm. Could you
So
Well,
imagine?
and yeah,
Could you
I
imagine those
admit I
droids
didn't.
trying to? Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I admit I didn't follow it that far, so maybe they gave a better explanation of the droids later on. But
yeah,
He did.
it's very much a case that the clones were way better at fighting and stuff than the droids were.
I mean, the only place we see the droids fighting is Naboo, right? Like on that big open field with.
No,
I'm trying
at
to
the end
remember.
of Clone Wars, they the clones are fighting the droids,
I
kicking
don't.
their ass. They're pushing them way back. The clones are actually better at it. Their tactical thinking abilities are significantly better. I mean, look. I mean, if you watch The Mandalorian, you've got the bounty hunter robot that's absolutely brilliant at picking people out and shooting them and everything, but completely outflanked by the Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they've got this high, fast processing, they can't think outside of the box. They're stuck within their programming. So most of the AIs aren't as versatile as an organic,
Mm-hmm.
at least in Star Wars. So
Yeah.
They can think fast, but they can't
they
think.
can't get outside the box,
They're
and
not
that's sometimes
creative.
needed. They're not
Yeah, well,
creative.
that would be the thing with any kind of artificial intelligence is if somebody did something completely unexpected, they might not be able to figure out how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
There was another series that I remember. I can't even remember the name of it offhand, but that was basically the idea was that the Empire had gone to using all, an all droid army because they felt that they couldn't trust people because sometimes people would decide they didn't want to shoot other people. So that they had been carrying on this war with an all droid army, and people started to realize that the droids were only programmed to deal with the modern technology. So if they used if they used a weapon that was more than 50 years old, it wasn't in the droid's programming, and the droids couldn't predict what it was going to do.
So they went back to fighting with swords and bows and arrows and crossbows?
Well, not quite, but projectile weapons, basically shotguns instead of lasers.
Mm-hmm.
Because the droids really didn't know how much damage that was going to do until it hit.
Yeah, it's yeah, but my real problems with the Star Wars is the second of the new movies.
Have you seen the third one?
I have not yet.
Okay, then I can't say anything.
I will. You can say everything you like. I've read about it.
So you know who she is.
I know who she is now. Yeah.
Okay.
But my point about it with I understand that the whole with the third movie he had a lot that he had to cram in to try and fix the problems of the second movie and actually make a movie that was semi-reasonable. Mm-hmm. And I applaud that, even though I feel that as a trilogy of movies they're subpar. And most of that is the second movie, because the second movie just brings in so much stuff without any precedence, and it's ridiculous. I mean, Luke's new ability to transport himself out to the point where another Force user wouldn't realize he's just a projected kind of Force ghost pretending to be there is just stupid.
It's a physical Force ghost.
Yeah.
Didn't they actually fight like physically?
No,
or did he always dodged. Okay. Okay, then never mind.
He didn't even make footprints. So, what the hell? How does Kylo not realize this? Even in Kylo's inept state, how does he not realize this is not Luke? You know, that this is just ridiculous. And the fact that it kills him by doing it is... Why? Why would it kill him?
Yeah.
Now, I'd understand if he killed himself first so he could go and do that. But then again, they're not supposed to interfere when they're Force ghosts. So how is it different if you're still alive and you're projecting yourself like a Force ghost? How are you allowed to interfere?
And if he's just a projection, how did he end up putting something in Leia's hand?
Yeah, which disappeared later. What did
he give her?
No.
What did he give her?
Han's dice.
Oh.
Which of course disappeared afterwards because of course they were still on the Millennium Falcon. So yeah, I mean that whole scene was stupid and crazy and no. Then, of course, the fact that once again, Ray, after a couple of days of training, is fighting like she's been training her entire fucking life against somebody who has been training his entire life. Or no, with it ended up being with, didn't it? But just as well as the person who'd been training his entire fucking life. You know.
Yeah. Well, she did have the work with the staff.
Yeah, but
You know,
it's not the same.
See, yeah, I know, I understand, but I mean, like, you can almost. Well, she's not. She's not someone who's never
capable, and she shouldn't be able to at least somewhat hold her own because she's obviously force sensitive and everything. So she'd have a good bit of precognition about what's going to be happening. I totally get that, and she should be a better than average fighter for those same reasons. What I'm saying is she shouldn't be as good as she fucking is. That's just ridiculous. And then, last but not least, the most. Well, no, I'll do another one before then. Leia was already dead in space before she suddenly somehow managed to use the Force to pull herself back onto the ship. Now, I'm not arguing because I know they're thinking that Luke did actually give her some training in the next movie and that they basically backfill some of that. She'd started to freeze. She was dead at that point. She's not going to wake up and be able to pull herself in. I don't care how force sensitive she is. Stop herself from getting thrown out initially, I could get. Maybe protect herself with the Force from the explosion to a certain extent. I get that. That would have made way more fucking sense than what they did. It was just a stupid little plot point there.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but it sounds like the midichlorians would have had to have some, incredible ability to repair damaged body cells at that point.
Yeah, well, apparently there is force healing. So I mean, there is an element to that, but yeah, generally the force user has to be awake for it to happen. So, but and then that aside, I can probably forgive that one. That's only a minor little quibble on it. The whole putting the spaceship into hyperspace to bring him to the other spaceship. Yeah. Oh, I only just thought of this. How many fucking centuries have they had hyperdrive?
No. Long.
For her to actually think that this is possible, it must have been thought of before that it was possible. Why weren't there hyperspace missiles? Things that went into hyperspace and then came back out and flew into things. Why weren't they used to destroy the Death Star? Because now shields don't mean fuck.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. As soon as you introduce a big, huge MacGuffin like that, you have absolutely fucked the story.
Well, that's one of the problems I actually have had with Star Trek, is they had a couple of episodes that they showed techniques that they could beam through the shields of another ship. And if they could do that, then you don't need torpedoes when you can just beam explosives directly on board the other ship.
Of course, you have to know how to get past their shield. So
yeah, but I mean, isn't that always really it's not something that you can just like do. It's something you have to spend a bit of time trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated because if they've got somebody on board who's been on board and they can tell them what the shield frequencies are in Star Trek, then yeah, you can beam a missile on board and just blow them up. But in general things, if you don't know what their shield frequencies are, or if they're rotating shield frequencies, your chances of being able to just beam a missile on board is virtually zero. So the few times they've done it, they've had somebody on board, or I think in one of the episodes they actually had them spot that the captain had walked in front of the control panel, which had the sign on it about what frequency the shields were. So yeah, there's been a few things like that where they've done it, but it takes special circumstances to be able to beam weapons on board.
To some degree.
It was the same when they did it in Stargate. The Asgard were able to use their beaming technology a couple of times to destroy some vessels before people figured out what they were doing and figured out a way to block them. So it's not a thing you can do ongoing because people will figure out how to block you with their shields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
I
don't
have
mind.
no problems with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that there's MacGuffins, and then there's like they make it plausible, you know.
Plausible with reason is fine. You know, if you're going to say, because everyone would have think, hey, you can teleport something. Why don't you just teleport a bomb inside and blow it up? Okay, so you introduce a story which has that in it, show that it can be done, and then show why it's fucking hard to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I
Yeah.
don't think that's MacGuffin. I think that's actually reasonably good storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But something like they did in Star Trek, where they went into hyperspace and then it emerged from hyperspace inside the other ship, to say that you could have always done this just means no, they would have done it well before.
Wait, I don't even remember that scene.
It's how they destroy the Snake ship, well, mostly destroy Snake ship at the end of the second of the new movies.
Oh,
So
where they have to have to turn off all these warning things, and then
yeah.
it's able to be done.
And then the commander is the only person on board the ship, flies the ship into hyperspace and pops out of hyperspace right inside the other ship.
Yeah, why couldn't you program a droid to do that?
On top of that, why couldn't you just build a missile that does it?
Fair. There we go.
Yeah, Hans has got a good point.
That's the worst thing of it.
Hans has got a good point. The problem I have with Star Trek is that the AI seems to be way better than humans, but they still use humans to control the ships.
But again, it comes back to that whole thing where humans are creative and can think outside the box, whereas an AI couldn't necessarily do that. Even Data has his limitations in creativity.
I also think part of it...
saying that even at that point, there is no AI that's been built that's superior to that they know of course. The new thing that the story's about is one that's superior to Data, but up until that point, there had been no AIs built that were superior to Data. So even the androids that they'd modeled after Data to do other things and that were not superior. Intellectually, they were not as good as humans, but they were useful for the tasks they used them for because they could be programmed to do certain tasks better than humans.
Well, and I think one of the problems they run into, which actually is starting to become a problem as they're getting the self-driving cars, is having an AI be able to make moral decisions. You know, like the trolley thing that, yeah, if there's 5 people on the track and you can throw the switch to kill 1 person instead of 5, do you do it? And does it depend on whether or not you know who that person is?
The test has been done, by the way, Purple. People don't do it, generally speaking.
So blue collar, the power supply. All you have to do is have a ship that can hold these missiles and have them bring the missiles close enough, and then you don't need as much power. So you hyperspace into the region, launch your ships, they lock onto a ship, and they hit hyperspace as well.
Having said that, who cares? I mean, the X-Wings could definitely do hyperspace because Luke used hyperspace in his X-Wing in Empire Strikes Back to get to Dagobah.
Yeah.
So the X-Wings definitely had hyperspace. I'm quite sure most of them would put a droid on an X-Wing, have it pilot the X-Wing filled with explosives to use it as a weapon. Sorry.
Yeah. I just Googled, do X-Wings have hyperdrives? And it says, yes, X-Wings have hyperdrives. In the films, the ones in the Rebel fleet were shown jumping into hyperspace.
Yeah, which
but
I
Hans
kind of
brings up
thought
an
was a
interesting
flaw in
point.
Star Wars too, that, you know, because they also said at some point while they were on the Millennium Falcon that a ship that small couldn't have a hyperdrive. I forget which ship they were talking about, but it wasn't any bigger than the X-Wing.
They were talking about the small ships, so the TIE fighters for the Empire didn't have hyperdrives on them. The early ones didn't anyway.
You know, and again, to me, you know, that's something they should have kept with. It would have made more sense if the single-man fighters didn't have hyperdrive, so they needed to be, like, loaded onto some kind of a carrier to be taken to the battle site.
Yeah. Yeah, blue collar heathens, right? Yeah, the early ships of the Jedi that were used in the prequels did not have hyperdrive. They used the ring systems or solar sails, a version of solar sails or something like that to do it. And TIE fighters didn't have hyperdrive. The early TIE fighters didn't have hyperdrive. By Jedi, they did.
Oh, yeah. So what you're probably talking about is is the scene when the Millennium Falcon arrives at Alderaan after it's been blown up and there's a TIE fighter, and that's when he makes that ship couldn't have a
Yeah, it
hyperdrive.
doesn't have a hyperdrive.
That's TIE fighters. TIE fighters didn't.
Well, there was that, but I thought there was another one besides the TIE fighter. But
No, there was quite a few
it's
ships
been
that
many years
didn't,
since I've seen it.
but X-Wings did. And my point was, by the time they were having to deal with the Death Star, what was stopping? They must have known they could do this. I mean, it's not going to be down to some general to think it up. The scientists at the time who developed things would have known they could have put bombs on board a ship, flown in hyperdrive, landed it in the middle of Death Star and blown it up. Why wasn't that the plan to get rid of the Death Star?
She's got a point.
Yeah.
I want to address something
Even
that
if you had
Hans
to
said.
go with something as big as the Millennium Falcon, I'm pretty sure they would have sacrificed one of their bigger ships to have done this.
I want to address something that Hans said. And it's specifically about the episodes involving the hologram of Dr. Moriarty.
Yeah.
He was an AI, technically, but he was very creative. So how would we explain that?
Because Star Trek's inconsistent.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and part of the thing is
look at the Doctor. The Doctor in Voyager. I mean, he's virtually human in his actions, more so than Data, because he actually has emotions and everything. He's very well rounded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and when Moriarty was created, the holodeck was specifically given instructions that Moriarty should have all the knowledge that Data had.
Yeah, he was specifically designed to defeat Data instead of Sherlock.
Right, which, however, that gets into another problem because that means that they already had a computer capable of downloading everything that Data was, which pretty much means the whole Drumhead episode was pointless because that was all about whether or not this guy had the technology to download Data's brain so he could study him.
On top of that, if they already had the technology to back up everything that was Data, why didn't Data back himself up before he went properly and not just to before? Yeah. Before he went and got himself killed saving Picard.
But the thing about the Doctor and Voyager, though, was he didn't start out like that.
Oh, no, he grew. He evolved.
He changed, and they tweaked his programming and did a lot with him on the fly to make him how he was. But yeah, why couldn't you just create a machine body and put him in it?
Oh,
no, because
and Hans is talking about Sung's wife.
Well, she wasn't.
She was a copy of Sung's wife died. Sung built an android that was in the exact image of his wife and downloaded her memories into the android. The android had technology within it that made it look to biomedical scans like it was human.
Mm-hmm.
And it thought it was Sung's wife.
And I think I can explain why the holograms can do it, but the AIs can't. Maybe the holograms are part of the computer of the ship, whereas an android is like Data is an individual machine.
You've also got to remember that in Star Trek technology, the ship's computers are partly organic.
Mm-hmm.
They actually have neuron packs that act as a processor core. So they actually have lab-grown neurons that they have to grow to be part of the matrix for the computers. Whereas androids like Data are purely synthetic. There is no organic.
This brings up a whole another set of moral issues then. Depending on the level of AI and if they're even partly organic in the ships, then what happens when Starfleet needs to decommission or scrap a ship because they think it's obsolete? Can the ship decide that it doesn't want to die?
Well, the Star Trek would tend to suggest that the ship can decide a lot of things and lock the crew out because Enterprise has done it at least twice.
Yeah. Okay, so what happens when Starfleet decides a ship's obsolete, so they want to scrap it to recycle the materials to build another ship,
Yeah,
and the
I
ship doesn't
think
want
in
to
the
do it?
past, when they've actually discussed it on the show, they actually generally they actually generally move their neuron packs between ships. So a new ship that's being built will actually more or less have the computer from an old ship shifted to it. So it's more like the ship, say, gets a body upgrade.
Yeah, I was going to
Okay.
say that would probably be what I would think would happen, is that
Yeah.
if basically what she just said. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, random point in Next Generation that bugged me. There were a couple of times when way out in deep space they rendezvoused with the Hood. The Hood was an Excelsior class ship. Why the hell was it a 75-year-old ship that they kept rendezvousing with in deep space? That thing should have been retired long before the Enterprise D was built.
Yeah, except they didn't. I mean, yeah, they might have been. A lot of them were retired from Starfleets, but still, many of them were still being used for other tasks, and occasionally they were being used as for smaller jobs around Starfleet anyway, rather than just building new ships all the time. I mean, I get that. I mean, if the
Yeah, but
ship's still
specifically
serviceable,
the
why?
Hood always had a Starfleet admiral on board. So this was always a ship of the line.
So maybe it wasn't a ship
Upgrade it.
that was, maybe it wasn't, it was supposed to be like a luxury. Like, you know how sometimes when you upgrade and things get advanced, the way that oh my goodness, my brain. The way that some people will, like, I want a car from the 70s because it's fancier and more luxurious than these new
Yeah.
cars. Maybe it's that kind of a thing. They keep them and they use them mostly for what should not be combat situations, because you shouldn't
This
be
could have been
taking an admiral into conflict.
and this could have been an admiral thing anyway. The admiral who liked using the ship, it may have been the first ship that admiral had served on as an ensign. And the admiral had kept the ship going for their own purposes, updating it rather than having a new ship.
Almost, except that happened with 3 different admirals.
Yeah, but once they already had this ship, even though it looks like the older ones externally, with all the upgrades internally, why would you decommission it? It also is a sign of Starfleet. You know, this was like where we came from.
Yeah, well.
Although that would have been better if it had been Enterprise, the original Enterprise, and not. But you can't do that because of the order the shows were made in.
Yeah, I've studied a lot of naval history, so that bit never made sense to me. You know, it's like a ship that old might still be in service as a support vessel, but it shouldn't have been out on the front line.
Yeah, but Starfleet often had some really old ships on the front line still. Basically, if they're still going, they kept them going, and there goes my Doctor Who ringtone.
Let's see. I'm trying to.
Well, the current novel I'm working on is trying to work under the concept of that we can't violate any of the known laws of physics. So there are some races who have developed ships that travel at nearly the speed of light, like maybe 99% light speed, but nothing can actually travel faster than the speed of light. So it still takes them a couple of decades to get between star systems.
If you can travel to really close relativistic speeds, it doesn't necessarily take you that long in your own time to get between
Well,
star
not
systems.
to the people on the ship, but my point being that, like, this group of ambassadors that got sent to Earth, when they realize something's wrong, they realize it's going to be 43 years before any reinforcements can arrive.
Yeah. All right. I have to go. Been an awesome chat, guys.
Okay, Jen, thanks for coming.
Good luck with your fundraiser. Don't forget, donate to Purple if you haven't already, and good luck with your shift, Purp.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, what Doc said. Admirals
Excuse
can
me.
often choose whichever ship they want, and some admirals are nostalgic. And maybe your theory's correct. And the first admiral that we saw on the hood had it recommissioned and overdone for himself, and then they were like, "Well, we just did all this for this ship, so let's just keep using it and be practical."
Yep. Okay, and I'm just going to drop links in the side chat here, although, like I say, I think my problem is I need to get this out to another audience. What the?
Hmm.
Oh, just the way YouTube winds up handling links.
Mm-hmm.
It actually, when I tried to copy the PayPal link from the description, it winds up making the link so long that it won't fit in the 200 characters, and I can't post it to the chat.
What are you trying to post to the chat?
The PayPal link. I've got it. I had to go to PayPal to get it. I couldn't
Oh,
take it directly from the chat link
gotcha.
because YouTube sucks
Mm-hmm.
and they have to add all of their own stuff in there.
Yeah, I wish we could get some more people with bigger communities to share.
Yeah, well, that's
But
what I need to get some people who have bigger channels who are willing to, because I think I've pretty much, topped out what my audience is going to be able to do.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I still have less than 300 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
So people, um, you know, I realize a lot of people are in worse shape than I am and can't really afford to send money.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you can repost the links anywhere that more people will see them, that will be a tremendous help.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even as it is, that's I've already raised nearly $500, and that was two people donated $100 each.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still, I mean, everything helps.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I've got until the 27th, so basically have 3 weeks from today
Mm-hmm.
to raise all the money in order for us to be able to, have everything done and be moved before the 1st.
So how far are you moving?
It's about 350 miles.
Okay, so it's not
Basically the opposite side of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm in northern Michigan, which is like northeastern Wisconsin. And where I'm trying to go to is St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is on the opposite side of Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I would have preferred to actually be in the Minneapolis, St. Paul metro area, but, I've been trying to get out of here for 4 years. I'm not going to be that picky. I'll deal with it being an hour and a half drive to most of my friends.
You said you're going where? St. Cloud?
Yeah.
And you're going from where?
Well, technically it's upper Michigan, but for all practical purposes, it's just northeastern Wisconsin.
Where the heck is Michigan? Oh, there we go. Okay.
If you see the lower and the upper peninsula of Michigan aren't connected, and the lower peninsula of Michigan does not give a shit about the upper peninsula.
So you're near. You're somewhere in the near this. You're in the part that's connected to Lake Superior somehow.
Yeah, between Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. So apart from the fact that our tax money goes down to Lansing, for all practical purposes, this is part of Wisconsin.
Oh, so you don't. I was like, wow, you have to go all the way around, but you just got to cut over.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's just straight across the top of Wisconsin.
Have you? I'm just brainstorming here, but have you considered not a rental, but a storage unit in near where you are, where you can store stuff
Well,
and
yeah,
then
I
perhaps make a
am
trip?
going to wind up leaving a bunch of stuff here stored in a
Mhm.
trailer at, on a friend's property
Oh,
to
okay.
come back and get it later, but um, still.
Still, you've got a lot of stuff to move and all that.
Well, and it's Sloth Girl and I have to go together, so it's basically
Mhm.
moving both of our apartments at once.
Mhm.
Because even though we drive each other crazy, we're kind of tethered together.
Right.
She has the MS. Some days she can't really deal with things on her own. She needs somebody there.
Mhm. I get it.
And yeah, while I'm generally functional, I have been known to go 3 days at a time without eating or sleeping if nobody checks up on me.
Mhm.
So
So you're gonna leave some stuff behind in a trailer with a friend and come back for it later. Are you gonna rent a truck or something?
yeah, yeah,
Or
we're going to be renting a U-Haul.
mm-hmm.
But mostly it's just having the security deposits and the
Oh, so
the
the
rental on the truck, the gas and insurance for the truck is a huge hit.
mm-hmm.
And then just all the getting utilities connected and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter how much you plan out, there will always be 100 things you didn't think of in a move.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm basing this on the estimate of the last time I had to move myself. Fortunately, this one isn't as long. The last one was like 1,200 miles. But apart from the distance, everything else is pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm. Bet you don't have anybody who could like make the drive with you with another car or stuff or something.
Well, basically, I'm going to be driving the truck, and Sloth Girl's going to be driving our car with the cats.
So let me ask you that. Why is she taking the cats in the car? If you think that might be an issue. Just
Uh,
asking.
just because there won't be room for both of us and the cats in the truck.
All right, but if you're driving two vehicles, why don't you take the cats in the truck with you, in the passenger seat, in the stairwell? Or are you planning on filling that up?
Well, the cats are going to wind up being stuck in the carrier for about 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So the carrier has to be big enough for both of them and to have a litter box in there, and there's no way something that size would fit in the cab of the
Oh,
truck.
right. I forgot that you said that last time. That yeah.
Yeah,
I forgot that part.
yeah, because they're not like dogs. We can't let them out
Mm-hmm.
at the rest stop to go to the bathroom. We'll lose them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, basically they're going to be. I'm going to build a cat kennel in the back of the car, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be stuck in there for the whole trip. And it's like, yeah, when we stop for gas and that, we give them food and water,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't risk them getting out of the cat kennel.
Right. Right. I get it. I forgot that you had said that you were going to put them in the same carrier with the cat with a litter box and everything.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. B if I knew somebody that I could just borrow a truck from, that would save a considerable amount. But at this point, I don't know anyone who owns a truck that is actually reliable enough to drive that far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the one my cousin has, I would not trust it to go 100 miles. And I certainly don't want to be stuck, halfway across
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin with the truck breaking down. And then what do you do?
Right. I was talking to my boyfriend about planning a trip up that way because of that channel making a zoo up there. Um, and he was like, "That's going to be a couple years till we do
You,
that."
yeah, you said something about a snake zoo in Wisconsin or in Minnesota.
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel that I watch called Snake Discovery, It's this couple in their house, and she does educational stuff related to snakes and amphibians and reptiles in general. And they found this old garden center in where was it? Maplewood, I want to say something. It's like
Okay, yeah. Maplewood is a northwestern suburb of St. Paul.
Yeah. So they found this garden center. It's off of 120 between 5th and 10th.
Okay, I think I know the store. Yeah. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, that may have been a Kmart store that had a garden center at one time.
I once I figured out where it was because the last video they put up, they took a picture of the outside, and I caught the name of the building next door. So I Googled the name next door, and I'm like, oh, yep, that's the building. It used to be a gardens, a something like Lenge, Lege garden center or something. And so they're going to they've bought the building and they're remodeling it, and they're going to turn it into a zoo / education center / storefront. So they'll have space for people to buy things for reptiles where they'll sell reptiles. They'll have a section that's zoo-like for their collection. And then their breeding programs, and then education areas where schools can bring their kids in to learn about reptiles.
Yeah. Yeah, and V's saying it's usually easier to get people to donate time and help, and yeah, that's great if you can find people in the area.
Right, that's the major issue.
And that's kind of my problem, is that I don't have any talents that I can transmit over the internet. If there's somebody nearby, I can come and fix whatever's wrong in your house, but it's got to be somebody in driving distance.
I mean, a lot of the people in this circle are in Australia, or Florida, Atlanta, New York, wherever it is that Jen's at. I can't remember right now. I am horrible memory.
Well, and it's like I even know like 4 people who are in the state of Michigan, although the closest one is 2.5 hours away. And a couple of them, the shortest route for me to get to the Lower Peninsula is often to drive through Chicago. So it's like, yeah, technically we're in the same state, but it's still an 8-hour drive.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't know if it's actually going to happen or not, but I had somebody mention that they're in the Minneapolis suburbs and might show up to help me unload the truck on the other end. Although I don't know if he realizes that's probably going to be a 2.5 or 3-hour drive for him from where he's at to St. Cloud.
Yeah, I mean, and anybody far away who wanted to help you, it would just be easier to, if you were going to like if somebody was like, say, oh, I'll fly up there and help you move. It's like, just send the money you would have spent on the ticket to me. That would be more helpful.
Oh, hey, Chris.
I think I know that name. If it's the Chris, I think it is.
Stuttering Chris. He's a friend of Nervardia.
Oh, yeah, no, I think he and I have talked on Twitter. Like I said, if it's the same person on Twitter that I was talking to the other day about all these faithless form questions.
Yeah, I've only became aware of him a few weeks ago, but he's putting out some good content. Oh, and Greg.
Who's Greg? Oh, Greg, you're...
Yeah, Greg Hart, my first Patreon. Well, and Doc also is my second Patreon now, so now I've got 2 of them. So that's enough money each month to get a large sandwich at McDonald's.
I've been so irritated. I've had this plan. I have my main bank account, and then I have the secondary account, and I put in a specific amount of money in that secondary account. and it's supposed to be enough to pay rent plus $40. And the $40 would be what I would use for Patreon. Of course, just giving like $1 or $2 per person.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for 6 months. Do you know how long I've been? And do you know how much I've actually paid into Patreon? Zip. Every month, something comes up, and I have to use that $40.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I've got a small discretionary fund of about 20 to 30 bucks a month that I've been spending on Patreon. And every couple of months, I just rotate it around to different people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is how I got one of my avatars. The
Yeah.
one with the Triceratops just sitting with his arms folded was Paulogia.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the premiums he offered for people who subscribe to him on Patreon.
Yeah, I have it all figured out. Although I might change it now because I'm kind of cooling on some of the people that I wanted to Patreon.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm like, okay, well maybe I can take that down and give it to somebody else.
Yeah, and that happens. Things change. And, well, it's
Mhm.
one of the things I'm looking forward to because one of the problems I have here is I've got the skills and I've got the tools to do all sorts of home repair work.
Mhm.
But where I'm living now, the whole town is so broke
So I
that
can't afford to do any.
even though the houses are literally falling down around people, they can't afford to hire me, even when I've cut my rates to be 1/3 of what they were in New York.
Mhm.
But if I can get back to Minnesota, I can actually be working for a respectable wage again.
Mhm.
So yeah, odds are I'm going to have significantly more money coming in every month once I get there.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's a big part of the calculation that the earning potential, and also that I already know so many people there.
Mhm.
It's not going to take me long to really become established. It's just
Now, is there is
I print up some business cards and I've got a dozen friends who will hand them out that I've already done work on their houses.
Oh, that's nice. So, but do any of these people that you know in that area have any way to help you, like, I don't know, um, like maybe they've got a vehicle and they could meet you? Well, that wouldn't really do much. Never mind.
Yeah, well, they've all got cars. Nobody's got a truck or a vehicle with any cargo capacity to speak of. But that's, once I get there, I've got networks I can plug into right away.
Mhm. So, what's your plan if it you don't hit more of your goal?
That could get to be a problem, and right now, honestly, I don't have a good backup plan. I'm just hoping this has got to work. Because apart from the finances, if I really start to think about the idea that this might not happen, that would be such a soul crushing defeat that I would probably shut down and not get anything done.
Mhm.
It happened once before.
Mhm.
About a year ago, I was, supposed to I had a lead on an apartment in St. Paul, and we were supposed to go because the guy wanted us to sign the papers in person. And we were heading there, and my car blew the brake line, so we couldn't go on the trip. And yeah, then basically, yeah, I pretty much shut down for about 3 weeks. I didn't get anything done, and very slowly climbed back out of it. But yeah, also in the process was drinking way more than I should have ever.
Mhm.
And alcoholism is rampant on both sides of my family. So I've often wondered why I'm not an alcoholic. So I'm very aware it probably wouldn't take much to tip me over to that. And in the 4 years I've lived here, my alcohol consumption has literally ramped up to about 10 times what it was when I was living with my fiance.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it pretty much seems inevitable if I'm trapped in this town long enough, I will wind up doing nothing but sitting in my chair and drinking every night. That's pretty much the inevitable outcome if I don't get out of here in time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary to think about, but the other side of that is I have had three three mental health professionals tell me that I don't have clinical depression. My
You're just
problem
too
is that
smart.
I'm too self-aware of living in an emotionally unhealthy situation, and that the only recommendation they could give me is to try not to think about it too much. That's not really reassuring.
Yeah.
That basically I have to dumb myself down in order to just exist here. And yeah, if it weren't the internet is my only intellectual stimulation. If it weren't for this community on the internet, I would, really never have an intelligent conversation with anyone. I've got a couple of relatives, a couple of uncles and cousins that I can talk to about one specific subject, but I have to be very careful about what I say because, yeah, people around here would not be open to the idea of me being atheist or me being anything but cishet male.
Mm-hmm.
There are two openly gay men in this town. One of them has gotten beat up 3 times in the last year leaving the bar.
Yikes.
Yeah, so that's about how open. There's 25 different churches here, so everybody's okay with you being any kind of Christian you want to be. The concept of you not belonging to any church would blow their mind.
Where's the GoFundMe link that you've got on your page? I can't find it.
Well, from the YouTube page,
Not
it's
YouTube. I meant your
right,
Twitter.
yeah, right in the description.
No. I'm trying to find the tweet where you tweeted it out.
Oh,
Because I want to see something. The thing is, and I'm thinking about this, and it's a little bit disappointing, I think. But oh, there it is. There it is. Okay,
okay,
maybe I'm
you got.
maybe I'm less disappointed then. You put out these tweets with all these people, and you're like, if you can't donate, can you at least retweet it? And it's just how many people actually do that? And you can actually see who retweets a tweet.
Yeah, and actually, that part of it hasn't been that bad. I've had a couple dozen people who have retweeted it.
33 retweets of the GoFundMe.
Okay, even higher than I thought it was.
But it's
So
like
it's like,
when that's the only thing that you're asking someone to do. It's a little disappointing when you don't see more people doing that. In my mind,
yeah,
I felt that with my fundraiser back in September. I hit my goal, but my goal was only $200. But like I would put it out there, and I'd be like, just a retweet to raise money for this charity, and I'd get like 3 retweets, and I'm like, okay, maybe you don't see it because there's a lot going on Twitter. I can understand that, I guess.
well, I know there's a lot going on in Twitter, and I know that, like I say, I'm a pretty small time thing out there. There's a lot of people who are aware I exist, and that's about
Mm-hmm.
it. That I don't interact a lot. Oh, hey, gotcha.
Not whoa,
Today?
Hey, mate, how you doing?
Hmm.
that
Not
avatar.
Thanks for stopping in. What's with the Grim Reaper motif?
Well, somebody made it for me, and so I thought it's only right that I show it off once in a while. It's like that one I was using as my Twitter picture. Somebody made that for me, and I like using things like that. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, well that's I got some fan art. That's why I've been using that as my avatar for a while.
Yeah, I know, and I've seen you got a few different things too. I quite like your fan art.
I think the young purple is adorable. I think that's so cute.
Yeah,
I think that's that. Is that one that you put up for in that second to last video you did, showing off all of the
yeah, I can bring it
giveaways
up
and
here
stuff.
again in a minute. Let me.
Yeah. So I think I've seen it. That's where I've seen it. And hey, everybody in the chat. Sorry, my audio sounds like shit. By the way, I still haven't worked out why it's giving me this muffled effect.
Oh, where are we?
Robert, you're funny one.
I just thought about it. I'm in a bunch of Discords that have got promote stuff channels, so I'm going to go find those.
Yeah, this is a Nigglesbot. He's actually a teenager
cool.
in Australia.
Cool.
He needed an extra cable to have to connect a dual monitor, and he couldn't afford it. So I sent him a cable, and he did this.
That's awesome. That's a nice picture too.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's nice to have a couple of different ones now, and I'm just floored that anybody would do anything for my channel. I mean, the idea that I've got a couple of people on Patreon who are actually even sending me a couple of bucks a month for doing this.
I still feel that way. Like, I'm still shocked that I have the support that I have. So I think it's something about your personality. You know what I mean? Like, some people can just brush that off and not give a shit, and others just don't.
Yeah, apparently I'm more likable than I thought I was.
This is true.
Well, I don't think there's anybody.
With the autism, it is really hard for me to judge that I'm not sure when people actually like me and when they're just being polite.
I get that feeling with myself as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a family run of autism, but I'm not diagnosed. Never been checked for it.
I will be right
but
back.
I get that a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I know you said you were busy editing some videos tonight.
Yeah, I just finished doing 2 gaming videos, so Robert will be happy. I even give him a bit of a shout out in one of them. And you as well, Perps. I give you a shout out as well.
So the new computer's shaking out pretty good? You're not having any problems with it?
Oh, in almost every way. Like, literally the only thing that's bugging me at the moment is this audio thing that you're hearing. Like, how I'm muffled and I'm not a clear, crisp voice at the moment. That's the only thing I have not figured out. My filter setup is all the same. All the settings are the same. Everything is exactly copied paste to its exact specificity from my old setup. But even when I swap the mics, it's not the mics, it's not the cables. It's just this particular setup has this muffled effect that I can't work out what's causing it, and it's before the filter itself. Like, even without the filter, it's still it's in the raw intake. Something is wrong.
Yeah, just something in the sound card isn't interpreting right.
That's what I'm figuring it. So hopefully somebody really smart will have an idea and be able to help me. But until then, I'm sort of stuck with this, or just doing my pre-edited videos I can record on my old computer still, which still works. My voice is beautiful.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have internet at the moment, so it's a pain to have to actually USB copy and everything go over to my new computer.
Yeah, that's for me. What I'd been looking for the next upgrade for my computer is I need a sound card because for some reason the one that's in there is not working right with the microphone. So I can only use a microphone that's plugged in through a USB port. Anything that's plugged in through the microphone port,
Yeah.
the signal is so weak that you can't hear it.
I suppose is it like an older version of USB, like USB 1, maybe?
Well, no, like I say, the USB works fine. It's the actual microphone plug that doesn't work right. And it's a plug in the back
Oh,
and a plug in the front, and neither one of them works, even though
what
I've
do they mix
got
around?
an XLR microphone, with a power booster, and I still can't get a high enough sound level out of it to make it worth anything. I get a better sound level out of just my headset microphone, so that's what I'm stuck using. So,
I
but
had
this,
problems with my
well,
old
the one
mic
I have
where,
it was designed to be a workstation, so the sound and video are built right into the motherboard.
Ugh, that's the worst.
yeah. Is it a PC build still though? Like, I mean, but with sound cards, you don't really need sound cards these days. So that,
Yeah. Well, it is a Hewlett Packard. It is a respectable brand.
So because it's not Dell. No, just kidding. Well, no, I had so many issues with Dell. When my mother bought one for my father, when we were living in South Carolina, and like they were all about the customer service and all that, but the customer service was shit for us. I don't know why. It was just really bad. Like they'd say, "Oh, we'll send you a part. You replace it and send the old one back," and they'd send us a bad part.
Yeah.
It would take 3 weeks every time to get the part. It was just.
Yeah, I've heard that Dell is not a good one, that you should avoid them for those kind of things. Well, and with mine, I've definitely identified that it's internal to the computer because Jim of Atheist Edge has the same microphone and power supply setup I have. So it's like I've done it, I've tested all that stuff. The signal should be there, but it just doesn't come out the other side.
So I changed my image, and we're all now using new images.
Yay! That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nice image too.
Yeah, artist that I follow was doing a emergency commission thing, so I signed up for a $10 commission and got this headshot of a character.
It is cool having a couple of different avatars so you can switch off from time to time. Actually, I asked Nigglesbot, the guy who did this one, I've asked him to do a couple of different arms for me, so I could swap out that arm for hands making different symbols, like the thumbs up, thumbs down, and OK. Just so that when I start doing edited videos with it, I could use it, to kind of have some expressions, even if the face doesn't change.
Oh, the way that character looks, all he would have to do is to just draw a couple little mouths, like a frowning mouth or a grimacing mouth or mouth, and then just pop it on the picture.
Yeah, well, like I said, I figured, just if that one hand up there, if I can just paste a different hand over it for the different things. So, asked him to work on that, but I know he's got other projects going. So, and with me doing the move, there's no way I'd be able to do anything with it before I finish moving. Got a couple of other fun ideas, but I'm completely hopeless as far as the artwork goes. So until I actually have some money to pay someone to do some artwork for me.
As I say, maybe you should have gone with the raffle method of raising money instead of a straight reward system.
I had been thinking of that, although, I was thinking that could get kind of complicated. So,
Maybe.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the best approach, but this is what we decided to try with, and, was hoping that it would get some more interest.
Yeah. Because when you mentioned it, I went out into my living room and I'm like, do I have anything that I could contribute? And I'm like, the only thing in my living room is my weapons. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's for me, it was, about 2 weeks of going through my collection to find out, what I've got that I thought there would be enough of a general appeal to the kind of people I think would be watching. So Sloth Girl was really good with
Knitted stuff.
Yeah, all of her handmade stuff. And
so have you tried contacting Cirrus directly and being like, hey, do you think you could help promote this or something? Have you considered trying to do a
It'd be worthwhile trying in personal direct message or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, except that I know Cirrus also is basically in all of his live streams, he's asking people for money to help them with expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
he's kind of already got that going, and it would kind of be in conflict with what he needs. And that's part of the problem is, it's never one person in the community. We've always got several people in the community who are trying to get money for different things.
I don't know. It just seems like, especially people that stream, how much of a problem would it be to just say, hey, I'm going to do a live stream, and any super chats that I get, or instead of super chatting me, donate to this GoFundMe and help this person.
People do it all the time.
Yeah,
People do it all the time.
Mm-hmm. We did that. You guys did that for Doc Fearsome when I was first getting into the group and getting introduced to everybody. I remember that everybody all day streams for.
Yeah, well, that's for Doc. We wound up running a 2-day marathon.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hoping that some people would volunteer to do some of that kind of thing for me.
Well, sometimes just put out word and ask, the bigger YouTubers that like Cirrus. Pirate said it's a great idea.
Yeah, Greg, I'm trying to raise 2,500. So far, it's plateaued at slightly under $500. Actually, I need another $15 to make it 500.
How much?
I'm $15 short of 500.
I mean, I'm sure there's people that we could try talking to see if they'd be willing to do that. Maybe.
I was thinking Neil.
Yeah,
first
Neil.
people I think of. Neil would do it without a moment's thought. We'll schedule it in and boom.
Okay, I guess maybe I need to be more direct about it. I did tag them about retweeting the link, but
right. But Twitter is a shithole a lot of the time, and sometimes people don't see it. And it wouldn't surprise me to find out that the bigger channels don't even have all their notifications turned off. So even if you did tag them, they wouldn't see it.
You'd be surprised, actually, even when you don't have it set like that, the bigger you get on Twitter even, the less notifications it will show, even of the people that you're following and want to see. You will find them not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to, if you're following thousands of people, you can. I mean, I only follow a couple hundred, and I can't keep up with the stuff on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also terrible at asking for help.
I also don't even see a lot of things. Like, I'm only following 211 people. And like, for some reason, I only see Nacha when he's replying to somebody else I follow, but I don't see his tweets. It's kind of weird. And that happens with a lot of people.
Yeah,
And
Well,
I can't figure out
and-
why it is that way.
messed up. It's very messed up.
Well, because in Twitter the stuff gets buried so fast. If you're not online 24/7,
That's true.
Yeah. Now, if you had Discord Purple, you could message people through Discord. I can try. So I just posted in. Oh hell, I forgot where. I put it in Drew's Drew's Discord and there and on the Frustrated Atheists server. There's 2 other channels that I might, but I need to know if their support and help is like where I would put that or not. And that's a bot. I can't ask that person. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're alone. He'll come back
That's
in a couple minutes.
strange.
He gets kicked occasionally. Yep, actually, it's right about that time where his ISP just kicks him.
No, true. Oh, well. It happens.
Yeah.
Mine, well, I think it still does it. I haven't really noticed now that I think about it, but it used to do that a lot, where it would just randomly drop, everything would just be gone. And so if I was in the middle of a stream, it's all done. You know, like, I have to redo everything, reboot. And back on the old computer, far out, that took forever. So one of the things I was most pleased about with this computer is it restarts in, like, no time at all. Whereas the other one, if I had to restart it, I'm like, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes before I can start up again. You know, with everything reloaded, you know, not just Windows and stuff, but then reloading everything to set up for a stream. Whereas this, I can have it set up within about a minute. Like, so beautiful. Oh.
Fresh new computers are so great. I can't remember what it's like before I had an SSD for at least my main drive.
Oh, I've only just got one.
I'll walk in if I only turn my computer off once a week. Tuesday to Wednesdays when my video game is patching. But I'll get up in the morning, walk in here, turn on the computer, walk into the kitchen, start a cup of Keurig coffee, come back, and it's up.
Yeah, it'll be
And
like
I'm
that.
just
Like mine, it's not even 10, 20 seconds, and it'll be booted, ready to go. And that's like, probably not even that, actually, now that I think about it. I'm probably overestimating it. It's just stupid fast. Hey, we got a Purple's back.
Yep.
yeah,
if your internet drops, and it's done that before to you, Nacho, check the time. If it's happening at the same time, it's your ISP doing things to the lines.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps happening with me is between 2 and 3 a.m. my time, my server is doing maintenance. So that's what I keep getting hit by this same time every night. Well, not every night, but a couple times a week at the same time it'll hit me.
I hate to run so quick, but I got to get going.
Okay, yeah, I know you're busy.
Thanks for letting me pop in, though. It's always nice.
Well, thanks for coming by.
I'll probably stay around in the side chat too, so because I was actually in there for a while. I think I've had it open the whole time. I've been meaning to come in, and then I finally got that chance to come in. So it's always good to catch up with you.
Yep.
Well, you know, you're welcome anytime. I know you're busy with a lot of stuff.
But I love you guys. You mean the world to me.
You
have a great one.
Have a good night. Or good day. I'm not sure what time it is there to say.
Nighttime. Just past 6 p.m.
Oh, okay. You're getting into evening now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I've still got to find myself on YouTube here.
Mm.
The
Oh, yeah.
YouTube takes longer to come back than the other stuff, so. So yeah, I lost the side chat and I need to be able to bring it back.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. No, that was really stupid. I hope I didn't. Where's my mirror?
What'd
Oh,
you
good.
do there?
I've got this little thing. It's a cell phone stand. It's shaped like a little pig, but instead of a head, it's got a suction cup on it. And so when I use my phone, I suction cup it to the back of my phone or the front of my phone if I'm using the camera. I absentmindedly just stuck it to my chin. And so when I first bought the thing, before I bought it, my boss at work was being grumpy. So I took it and I slammed it onto my forehead and suction cupped it to my forehead and looked at her and said, "Look, I'm a unipiggy." I was just trying to be funny and make her laugh. But then instead of doing the smart thing of like sliding it down or peeling it off with one finger, I just pulled straight out
And you gave yourself a hickey.
on my forehead. And so as soon as I did it on my chin, I tried to pull and then I remembered, and that's when I was like, oh God, please don't tell me I just gave myself a hickey on the chin. But I successfully avoided that affliction. So, do you want to hear the new stuff with the non sequitur show?
Okay. Yep, and thanks to Greg, we just broke the 500, so.
Yay for Greg. Unihickey, yeah. Yeah, I went over to the makeup department and haphazardly matched my skin and put some on it so that I would not be so obvious while I was working. So, non sequitur drama. What was the last thing you've heard?
Well, just I knew that somewhere in a day or two here it was supposed to be the deadline, for Kyle handing over, handing over the show itself, handing over the books.
Mm-hmm.
So, and basically people were betting on whether or not he was actually going to hand things over, but it seemed that most people were figuring he probably wouldn't.
Nope, he did. So there's two things that have happened. He turned in the books and everything, apparently. But he also, it's a 68-page document, I think is what it was. 56 or 68, somewhere in that neighborhood. Listing all the incomes and expenses for the non sequitur show.
Mm-hmm.
What he's basically done is I don't know how honest this is really, but he said that I did all of this work for the non sequitur show as Kyle Curtis designs. And I'm charging the non sequitur show $120 per episode. So, in fact, the non sequitur is in the hole by about $20,000.
Ah, that's how he figured it.
So, what he did was he went and he took every bit of every asset that he made, all the music, all the frames, all the thumbnails, and all that, laid them out in this document. Said, I shopped this out. The average payment for what I've done, it would be $400 per episode. But since I was doing it for my own company, I value it as $120, and that still made the show go into negative 20,000, something like that.
Okay, I have to interrupt here for a bit to give credit where it's due. Amiga Nuts had said about breaking the 500, so I also have a donation on PayPal, which I'm going to assume is him. One problem with PayPal is it does just give the real names. It doesn't give me the people's screen names. So I'm
just use initials.
Well, I'm assuming that this is Amiga Nuts that also made a significant contribution here. So that puts us up to about $560.
Nice. That's me clapping.
So just wanted to make sure that everybody gets credit. And Sloth Girl apparently has come in here and she said, "Chin plus hickey is a chickie."
Yeah. So, like I said, he's basically worked the books in such a way that the non sequitur show is in the negative, and he's owed money, right? So then it was he's got a signed affidavit stating that he was never served. Steve's lawyer had the servicing part of it done by mail. The person who signed for it was his mother. But the problem is that would be fine if that was his place of residence. But he has proof, apparently, that he's not lived at that residence since the 15th of July, which means that he was improperly served and the case could be dismissed based on a technicality. But there are multiple clips of Steve admitting he knew it was an old address. So there's the possibility that, they go before the judge and he presents these clips and says he knew he wasn't serving me at my address. I was never served properly.
Okay, yeah, I can see how from a legal standpoint, from an attorney, that would be a problem. It sounds like a pretty scummy way to dodge around responsibilities.
Now, well, that's the thing. If that's how it goes, they have to start over, which means that Kyle can then make his case. And there would be a fair trial, so to speak.
Well, he had the chance to make his case and he didn't bother to show up.
Well, like he said, he was in a dark place. He was being threatened and all that stuff going on, and he just kind of went, meh. He had a devastating setback and crawled under a rock. People have done that before.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the more damning part is that Steve admits and knew, apparently, this is all apparently, not necessarily confirmed or anything, that it was an old address. But we also don't know if that's actually an issue in South Carolina law. This is based on the fact that Nate Brody says that up in New York, that's how it would work. If South Carolina is like New York, they could get the case dismissed on a technicality.
Well, there's also the question that even if it's an old address, is there any reason to believe that anyone had a newer address for him? Because if that is his last known address, it is still valid in almost every state. Unless he can prove that they knew he had a more recent address.
Well, there's clips of Steve saying, I knew that was his old address and not his current address. So there's steps that Steve could have taken to acquire the new address and then had it sent to the right place. That's what's being said.
I'm not sure about that. Are there, I can easily know that somebody moved away from a place and not necessarily have any legal means to find out what their current address is.
It's called a change of address. If he filed a change of address, then they could find that.
That's not public record, is it?
I'm not sure. I don't know actually how that works.
No, because that's something the post office keeps, but that is not public record because bill collectors cannot use that to follow you to another address. So there has to be something more than that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I like I said, I don't know. Well, it says right here that says you can request the United States Postal Service to inform you of the new address of a person by using USPS ancillary service endorsement.
Okay, maybe there's something there I'm not aware of.
Write a short note to the person you are looking for and place it inside an envelope. Seal the envelope and write the last known address of the person you're looking for in the center of the envelope. Let me pull this up and see what else it says. Write a short note to the person you are looking for and place it inside an envelope. Seal the envelope and write the last known address of the person you are looking for in the center of the envelope. Properly label the envelope by placing your name and full address in the upper left corner of the envelope. Print the words address service requested in any of the following spots on the front of the envelope. Above, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. By placing the words address service requested, you are instructing UPS to advise you of the new address of the person you are looking for. Attach the proper postage and mail the envelope via first-class mail. Wait for the mail to be returned to you with the new address of the person you are looking for.
Okay.
It says a UPS treats undelivered as addressed mail labeled address services requested in various manners depending on the length of the time since the recipient moved. If the addressee moved within the last 12 months, the mail piece is forwarded at no charge. So he moved within the, no.
Okay. Well,
But yeah.
Okay, so apparently there is a means for it then.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm at the point where I don't really care who wins. It's just a fun ride at this point. Like all these sudden changes. Oh, that's messed up.
What?
So it's a tweet that was retweeted by Lizzie Lang. It says, a daily reminder that the Christian persecution of European heritage never ended. This is what happened to the idols of Perun, Rod, and Veles shortly after they were erected. Let me share screen.
Okay, not just saying about doing a live stream, so we might all just jump over to his channel here.
So
I'd be good with not being in charge for a while.
Oop, I made it disappear. So they erected these pillars to these idols, these gods, and Christians came along and cut them down.
Oh, fuck. Where was this?
I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, that's... How would the Christians feel if somebody came up and was painting graffiti on their church? You know, or busting down the statues in front of the church.
Okay, what are we doing, computer? Oh, there we go. Well, yeah. And then, of course, this reply right here is from Wolf the Red. He says, my God has a hammer. Yours was nailed to a cross. Any questions? But yeah, that's just majorly fucked up. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm losing my words here. Yeah, morbid thought, but Jesus was the son of a carpenter, so did they make him build his own cross?
How old was that, Doc?
Okay, Kitty, did you want me
No,
to share this again, or are you done with sharing your screen?
no, I'm done with sharing it.
Okay.
It says this happened to idols shortly after they were erected. So I can't. Let me see if I can dig into this a little bit more. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, Sloth Girl, you mean the picture that's cycling now? That was the one I took right in front of the building just before I started the trip to Kentucky. So you can see that's I've got Amy parked in the turnaround right in the front, right by the front door there. Amy is my car, in case anybody's wondering, but it's spelled AIM-ME.
Yeah, I can't find. It's apparently they were Slavic gods, so I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not coming up in the news, so.
Okay, not
Or
just
when I
saying
Google.
that he's gonna start his stream in about 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we?
Oh no, it was recently erected, probably by newer neo-pagans or not revisions, recreationists.
Yeah, just from the picture you had there, it looked like it was all a pretty new site. That it was something that at most hadn't been up more than a couple of years before they cut it down. But it could have just been a matter of weeks or something. So anyway, not just gonna organize a stream. So why don't we run this for about another 15 minutes or so, and then I'll shut this down so it can take a bit of a break, and then we can all hop over to Notch's channel.
Okay.
So Kitty, have you got anything coming up that you want to plug?
Just my interview with Neil on the 19th.
Okay,
That's
Neil's
it.
great. That'll be fun.
Yeah. I keep waffling between very nervous about it and kind of psyched about it. You know.
There's nothing to worry about with Neil.
No, it's not even Neil that I'm worried about. It's like it's I'm worried like I'll be boring.
No, I mean if you get stuck or flustered, he's good with the questions. He'll have a way to get you moving again.
He has the questions. That's good.
Yeah.
My major worry is that it's going to be one of those things where like, hey, this is my guest, and then I'm expected to come up with stuff, and it's like, no, ask me questions so I can give you answers.
Yeah, I felt the same way, but Neil had me on. I think it was like back in October, and I felt the same way going into it. But yeah, he just kept it moving. It was all good. It was really easy.
And of course, I will definitely.
But I know what you
mean.
It's like, yeah, I couldn't just get on there and somebody introduces me and just sits back and expects me to talk, and it's like no.
No, don't do this to me, please.
I have a terrible problem anytime I start up a show and there isn't somebody to talk to. I can't do solo. I'm just sitting here and I have no idea what to talk about if there isn't someone else in the room.
Oh, One Ring is going to be on the 6th, on the 8th. So.
Oh, he's cool.
And Vagrants. No, I'm just looking at people who might be able to be like, yeah, I don't have anything to plug, but my friend here needs help if you inclined,
Yep.
In fact, I'm going to mention that in the group and be like, plug Purple's thing on your.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually One Ring and Hops. I didn't know either of them. Hopswatch. I didn't know either of them until you got them into the Christmas Day marathon. But if getting to be friends with them.
I don't think I had anything to do with One Ring because I didn't know One Ring either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he might have been somebody else that knew him.
Oh.
I actually thought One Ring was someone else and a girl.
Okay, I had assumed this was somebody you knew on Discord or something because they just, popped up and took a time slot, like a day or two after you you started recruiting people.
It was probably somebody saw, but no, Hops was definitely me. I play Minecraft with him sometimes.
Yeah, he's been teaching me the proper pronunciations for some of the Scandinavian words. Just
Nice.
because it involves vowels that just aren't in the English language.
What's funny is that I follow him on Facebook, and he does his stuff almost exclusively in his native tongue on that. So he'll post something about his pet project, which is that Kjorben Sunder, whatever the hell.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it. Cool. We play together sometime. And he'll have it in his language. I can't remember what it is right now. I can't remember if he speaks Dutch or if it's I can't remember what language he speaks. I'm bad.
I think Norwegian is his first language and Dutch is his second.
Mm-hmm. But so he'll post, and then I have to Google translate it. I have Facebook translate it, and then I reply in English, and so you'll see like Dutch, English.
Yep. Oh, if you want to see
Robert
something
X?
hilarious, try watching the shills with the closed caption on, and try to see. Just watch when the closed caption tries to figure out what Taddy Boggle is saying.
I imagine it's not funny. I mean,
it can't even figure out what language he's trying to speak.
That's funny. You know, that's one of those things that one of these other people, Lady Unicorn, that's who it is. I was trying to remember. Has been trying to impart on people is closed caption your own stuff. Don't let it auto.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to do it, but if you close caption your stuff, then the bot can scan it easier, and you have probably have a better chance of not being demonetized. It is the letters that we pronounce different. I can see that.
Yeah, all depending on your accent, it can come up with very different things for the same people speaking the same, or for different people speaking the same sentence. You know, I mean, it's really amazing that the closed caption can, do the speech to text. We've come a long way with that, but yeah, just, and I mean, it happens really. There are some of the people from the deep south or down in Texas, I can barely understand what they're saying, and we're supposedly speaking the same language.
I have a coworker from Alabama, and every so often, we've been working together for like 7 years now, and he'll come up and he'll start talking to me, and I'll stomp my foot and go, Jimmy, I've told you need to speak English and stop speaking that Alabamese.
Yep.
But he's got a little bit of mush mouth going on, so that contributes to it. But I mean, I understand it most of the time. There's just some words that he says, and I'm just like, what?
I nailed some guy on Twitter because he was going on about, why can't Americans speak English properly? And I just responded, yeah, you're one to talk with Scotland and Ireland in your own backyard. That's about what it is. It's like, yeah, the difference between like the West Coast and the Midwest and the Deep South is about the same differences between Irish, Scottish, and English. It's like you can get most of the words, but some of it's pretty damn confusing.
Oh, one of my favorite things is an old clip of Robin Williams talking about the invention of golf. And it's just hilarious.
Yep. Yeah, Hans is saying it's typically not the extra letters that are the problem in Scandinavians. It's the letters that are pronounced differently. And that's actually one thing I do sometimes just to mess with people is my last name is Johnson. But since I'm Scandinavian, I tell them it needs to be pronounced Jan Sven. Same spelling.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, I'm not so worried about doxing myself once I get out of here. I've already got a thing posted on my channel that my first live chat, when I get to Minnesota, I will unmask. So isn't that worth sending money for, people? You'll get to see me live on camera if I get enough money to get there. Oh yes, sloth girl.
No, yeah. Double face reveal.
No, just in the side chat, sloth girl was saying do you know why the Scots call them kilts? Because
if you
they
call
killed
them a
everyone who
skirt,
called them skirts.
yeah. Oh, so One Ring says I literally randomly saw a tweet about it. So there we go.
Yeah.
Because I just asked him, I'm like, why? I told him what you said, and I was like, me? I don't think I even knew him before that.
Okay. Yeah, I had just assumed that he was somebody that you would know on Discord.
He probably saw me. He probably saw a retweet of one of us. See, now I'm gonna.
Yeah, because it's with that Christmas Day string, you really you bailed that whole thing out. Because we had a bunch of empty time slots, and you brought in like 4 people that I had never met before.
He follows a bunch of people. Oh, yeah. Like, well, who? Let me guess. Was Mr. Bear one of them?
Bye, Doc. No, Mr. Bear I'd already known.
So who are the other 2 that you didn't know that I brought in? I'm just curious.
Well, T and Danish.
That was another random because I didn't know T in Danish.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Whoa,
then.
wow.
I know that she was. She's like friends with Jens and Angie, so maybe one of them had got her in there.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the list again now.
Let me see. Oh, I don't have it on this computer.
But yeah, it was amazing that really in the last couple of days that you were able to bring in enough people that we could bring that whole thing together. And and there were a couple of people that again were people that we had followed each other on Twitter, so we were kind of aware of each other but had never talked directly.
Mm-hmm.
Like End the Conspiracy. I'd watched a couple of his videos, I'd commented on a few things, but I'd never really talked to him, and he stepped up to take a slot. So that's what I got out of the whole thing, is that it really expanded my community on here.
Well, I guess we're lucky that no random person who saw the tweet was like a weirdo, more so than normal,
Yeah,
or within.
It is good, because I was just assuming that anyone I didn't recognize was somebody you knew, and apparently that was a bad assumption.
Yeah.
I just assumed that these were all people that you had called in.
Yeah, that was yours. Yours is PurpleWorange, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Sloth Girl saying that the closest Walmart's an hour drive to us, but one of the greeters is always there with a kilt, sometime in the full Scottish gear from head to toe. The kilt and the hat and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can see a lot of people giving him strange looks, but it's interesting.
That would. Jenny said something in the Discord, not the Discord, the face. Brain, can you please pick the right word? Twitter group. And I almost responded to her like she was here to respond to her. So I pulled it up. It was Nacha, Dallas, Mr. Bear, and the Conspiracy, Osman, Hopswatch, Teen Danish, One Ring, Lavender Lady, Johnny Drive-By, Bionic Dance, Recovering Catholic, Atheist Pastor.
Atheist Pastor was the other one. I didn't know who he was either. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well I found him through Nervardia.
Yeah,
and all the other Australians.
Yeah, he was with one of the Australians down there.
Oh, this is the first one before you split it with X-Cult Baby, because she's not on this one. The image that I just found.
Yeah, X-Cult Baby was another one. It's like I had watched 2 of her videos, and that was all I knew about her.
Mm-hmm. I met her at Faithless Forum last year. Very briefly. Didn't realize she was going to blow up like she did. Would have spent more time talking to her. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'll just wait until you're rich and famous and show up and exploit your wealth.
Oh.
That's actually a line from the Muppet movie. But yeah, it's what I use a lot. I don't expect I'll ever be famous, so.
I wouldn't want to be famous, honestly. I think about some of the shit that I did when I was a kid, and I'm just like, if I became famous, somebody who knew me as a child might come forward and spill all my childhood secrets. And I'm like, no, thank you.
Well, I've got the one advantage that there really isn't much anybody can say, that I haven't already admitted to. Mostly it would be my family would be embarrassed by a lot of the stuff that would come out.
Yeah, probably more than that. But it's just one of those things.
Yeah. But, actually, when I lived in St. Paul, I toyed with the idea of running for the city council just because I thought it would be funny to see what the reporters would try to do, with a candidate who didn't try to deny anything.
Mm-hmm.
And coming up with these scandals like, do you know there's nude pictures of you on, does your wife know there's nude pictures of you on the internet? And I'd be like, well, who do you think
she probably
took the
put
pictures? And it would just be fun to play with the reporters like that. But then it occurred to me there was the slim chance I might actually win, and then they'd expect me to do the stupid job.
Yeah. That's always one of those things that I've never... Like the whole thing with leaked nudes and whatnot. I was just like, just own it. It's not like...
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it is just people worried about conforming to social norms. And that's like most of the stuff on me. Yeah, they could pull up all sorts of stuff that people would think were these horrible sexual scandals, and it's like, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I've been polyamorous, pansexual all my life. And it's like, yeah, you'll run out of ink before you finish the list of all the people I've had sex with.
Yeah. No, but the thing that always gets me is it's like if someone leaked nudes of me, I would be like, why? I mean, I don't care if you've seen it. It's your eyes that are going to need bleach. That would be my response. Leak my nudes. They're the ones that are going to need the bleach, the eye bleach. But it's always these pretty Taylor Swift looking kind of girls that get their nudes leaked, and then they're like, "Oh my god!" I'm just like, you have boobs and a vagina just like every other woman. What's the big deal?
Yeah, well, and a lot of those celebrity things, it really makes me wonder, was that actually a leak or was that something that, they hired somebody to leak for the publicity?
There's another thing. Run for politics. Get a get a mole in your opponent's team, and then have them leak your nudes with proof that they did it, and then have them claim that your opponent authorized you to do it.
Yeah,
But that's really, really devious and a lot of effort.
okay, let me see if this works.
If what works.
Robert X said he is having problems with the GoFundMe link. And I think maybe it was giving it too long of a link form. Okay, Robert, why don't you try that one and tell me if that works any better? And apparently the one that's in the description tacked something extra onto it that's not needed. Okay. So hopefully that should correct the link in the description. Need to make sure that those are working so that if anybody's trying to help. Okay. Okay, yeah, so I guess not just setting up the gaming stream fairly soon here. So I need to take a break to fill one thing and empty another. Yeah, the PayPal link is actually preferred. Unfortunately, the PayPal does not give people, it doesn't show the username, and it does not give people the option of donating anonymously, which I know discourages some people.
I thought that was weird because, like, I saw during Christmas time when they were doing that War on Christmas stuff, they had like a PayPal pool rather, where you could see how much was raised. And I'm like,
Okay.
how do you do that?
Yeah, there must be another way to set it up on PayPal then that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because that's the other thing with PayPal is it doesn't show anybody the amount that was raised for the charity, and even when I go to it, then it winds up, just showing the total amount that's in my account. Which I then have to kind of figure out, what were donations, and at the same time, I'm trying to generate money, like by selling stuff on eBay and that. So then I have to figure out, what's money that people donated and what's payment for something I sold on eBay.
You should plug your eBay too, in case you've got something on there for sale that somebody might want to buy. Unless that's in your real name and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is under another account. That would be.
You'd be doxing yourself.
Yeah, it would be giving out some other information that I don't necessarily want connected at this point. because that's under a completely different email and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate your help. We, really appreciate the donations and, anybody putting the link out any place at all, any place that people will see it that might not see me, which is most everywhere because I'm really not that big on social media. I'm not on Discord. I hardly ever get on Facebook, so anything people can do is, greatly appreciated. I guess I have to be a little more direct and, try and ask some people if they'll promote it for me. And I feel really weird about doing that. And I guess I don't know the protocol. I don't know the proper way to ask somebody, hey, will you shill on me? Will you shill for me on your channel? I really don't know how to ask somebody that.
So what I would do if it was me is say, hey, I'm setting up a charity drive for a fundraising drive. Would you like to take a slot and do a little show to help me out fundraising for my move? That's what I would do. Private message or wherever you can to ask people if they'd like to do that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm gonna have to do, is kind of decide on decide on a day and just, organize kind of a marathon thing. And, it's like it was real easy to do that for somebody else. I feel really weird doing it for myself.
That's fair.
Like doing it for Doc when he was in trouble and needed the car. Yeah, that was no problem to jump in there and start making up a schedule and start, bugging people until I had all the time slots filled. Doing that for me just, well, see, it's part of my conditioning with the way my family's arranged, and I'm just used to not asking for help because even when people say they will help, most of the time they don't show up when it's time.
Yeah, that same issue that Trio was having.
Yeah, so I've gotten so used to the idea that people aren't going to show up that it's not worth asking, and I've just got to figure out how to do it on my own. And that's, what's been programmed into me for 50 years, so it's kind of hard to, think a different way when I actually have something that's too big for me to handle on my own.
I can't remember.
So yeah, there are enough people. Well, I mean, we proved that with the Christmas thing. There are enough people across, different continents that if we can get it organized, we've got people in different time zones, so we've got people awake all the time.
Yeah.
So I guess it's largely a matter of, picking out when to do it, that it's not going to be, running over too much that other people will already be involved in.
Yeah, that's one of the issues is when to do it. What you could do is pick words. Pick someone to be like your anchor. Like or use your own time as an anchor. Say like, okay, I do my stream from here to here. Does anybody want to go after me? Or
Yeah.
if you manage to get somebody who's a little bigger who does a lot of streaming, like for example, Surus does a set stream on a specific day. Say, okay, well, I'll stream before you, and then you can go, and then look for other people to fill in after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to send out some private emails and that and see, who'd be willing to participate. We'll work on a schedule. Okay, well, I'm gonna shut this down here for now, and we're all gonna jump over to Notch's channel shortly.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And Robert X says he just sent another donation by PayPal. So let's just see if I don't click on it often enough, it logs me out after a couple of minutes. Okay, so yeah, we're now at about $570 odd. So thank you very much. I appreciate it all. And always remember to think for yourself. Bye bye all.